Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to MyTutor's online school. And welcome back to English. So today we're going to be continuing on with what we did on Tuesday. So this is our part 2 for the paper 2 question 3, which is the language analysis question. So very sort of as different as I can make it for you guys today. So we're going to be looking at a 19th century text, which is about something completely different. So hopefully you've got a nice range between the two things, a nice contrast. So as always, we'll do about 45 minutes teaching. I might spill over into do a little bit more teaching time. We'll see how we go. And then 15 minutes for questions. If you've got any questions, either during or at the end, then please pop me either in the chat or the Q&A function. I tend to look at the chat more just because it seems to be a little bit more popular, but I will pick them up as and when I can. If you've got any questions about the MyTutor online school or just MyTutor generally, then also pop those in and Bola will answer them for us at the end. So Bola's going to be with us the first 10-15 minutes or so, and then she'll pop back for the last 10 minutes to answer any questions that you've got. So please feel free to fire any of those out as well. If you've got any questions relating to English, whether that's language or literature, or there's something that you want to perhaps suggest as something that we can do in the future, then please do pop them into the chat and Q&A so I can pick them up, and I will do my best to answer all of your questions. Right, so if you don't know me, I'm sure all of you do, and you're sick to the back teeth of me telling you who I am. So my name is Vicky. I did English Language and Linguistics at university, then I trained as an English teacher last year, and I've done 350 lessons with MyTutor. So that's me. Right, so let's get cracking then. So very similar in terms of the things we're going to be looking at, but how they are presented are very different because we're looking at two different time periods. So we're going to be working on defining that new terminology that we looked at last lesson. Loads of you guys said, oh my goodness, I haven't heard of most of these. That's absolutely fine. This is what I would call as a teacher a stretch and challenge. So just giving you guys a little bit more to go at, a little bit more to play with in your answers. If you don't know them, that's absolutely fine. I don't expect you guys to know them. So it's just a little bit of extra learning, something which is a little bit more different rather than just doing DeForest all the time, which I think will help you build up your marks because it's something a little bit different. So please don't worry if you haven't heard of any before, that's absolutely fine. I'm not worried in the slightest. And then we're going to be looking at how we can apply some of those and some of the DeForest features to a 19th century text. It's a really interesting one, I think a little bit controversial. So, oh, I didn't know you could raise your hand in here. That's interesting. Oh, I didn't know I could allow you to talk. Can you, if you've got a question, can you just pop it in the Q&A for me? Right. I've got a Kahoot right at the end if we have time. Right, okay, so we're going to crack on with a quizzes first of all. Right, so this is just looking at, it's only 7 questions, the non-fiction terminology that we looked at last lesson to see what you guys can remember. So I'll just pop the game code in, and what are we doing? joinmyquiz.com. So that's what you need to know. That's in the chat function. I'll just let a few more of you hop on, and then we will get going. So how many have we got? We've got 34 of you today, which is fantastic. So we've only got 6 of you on there so far, up to 7. So I would like to see some more on here, please. If you don't want me to know your name, that's fine. Just make something up, or you can use my name if you want to. Fab. So we're up to 11. Let's get a few more on, please, before we get going. Fabulous. Shall we get 2 more on and then we'll get going? Fabulous. 1 more and then we will get cracking. Great. The code's just above where you've just popped into the chat there. So it's 796780. Oh, fabulous. We've got 3 people on a 3 streak. These are looking really promising so far, guys. I'm really impressed. We've got a few people on a 5 and a 4 streak. That's fabulous. Got a first person to finish. Oh, we've got a couple of finishers. So we've got William the Conqueror on top, obviously. Oh, Slinky's just overtaken. Fabulous. So well done to Slinky and William the Conqueror, whoever you guys are. Got all 7 right. Well done. That's really impressive. Fabulous. Right, so I think what I'll do, whilst a few of you are finishing, I will move those of you who are waiting onto the Mentimeter. So this is just a little opinion finder. So the info you need is up the top there, so menti.com and then 484402. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to rank these statements from first being the one you absolutely agree with and fourth being the one that you completely disagree with. I think most of us are hanging on to here, aren't we? That's fine if you guys want to do it that way round. But if you want to move on to the Mentimeter, you absolutely can. Oh, this is really interesting. How are you getting over on quizzes? Emma's got 1 left, Unknown 123's got 1 left, and then we've got a few others at the bottom. So I'll just give you guys a couple more minutes to have a crack at that. So if you finish your quizzes, pop over to menti.com, pop in the code and have a go at this opinion finder for me. This does link to the text that we're looking at today. I'm interested to see what you guys think. So we've got 14 of you over there so far, which is fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to assume that the few people at the bottom, because I haven't heard any pings, have decided to stop, so that's absolutely fine. So who have we got? We've got Slinky first, then Emma, Jay, William the Conqueror, Max, Kieran, Jess, Tumaz, PC, Louise, and Jania. I think, hopefully I said that right. Fab, right, I will close that one down. So those of you who haven't gone over to Mentimeter already, quickly have a go at this opinion finder, and then we will have a look at the text that we are doing today. So we've got 19 of you over there so far, and there is 39 of us. So we've just got over half. So a few more of you jumping on, please. Nice one about this is that I don't think you have to put a name in, or at least I can't see your names. So if you're worried about me knowing your name and you don't want to perhaps spark controversy or feel embarrassed about anything, then I'm not going to know. So it doesn't matter really. Right, so I think this is really interesting actually. So first we've got we like watching animals in the wild. Second, I enjoy visiting zoos and animal sanctuaries. Then I don't like visiting zoos, but I don't have anything against them. And then at the bottom, I think zoos and keeping animals for profit is immoral. So I think that's really interesting. I expected what is in fourth to be slightly higher up, because I think times are changing and zoos are becoming more and more controversial. Obviously, it depends on the quality of the zoo, doesn't it? But definitely it's something which I think has changed in the last 10 years or so. I don't think there was as much, should I say, hype about or concern about zoos and how they are kept. But very interesting, very interesting. I thought you guys, being slightly younger, might put that one slightly higher up, but that's really interesting. Fabulous. Right, there will be a Kahoot at the end if we've got time, and I think we probably will have time. Right, so this is what we're looking at today. This is our question. How does the writer use language to describe her experiences of visiting animals? So 12 marker, so the difference being on your paper one, you've only got 8 marks, and we need to write an extra paragraph essentially. So that's being the difference. So let's have a look at the extract, and then we've done our own individual opinions on zoos, keeping animals for profit, that sort of thing. I'm going to read you the extract that we're going to be focusing on today. So on Tuesday, I gave you the entire extract and then showed you the little excerpt that we were going to look at. Today, I'm just going to show you the excerpt. Right, so this is taken from a pamphlet entitled Foodless, Friendless in Our Streets, written in 1853 by a lady called Susanna Beaver, which I think is an absolutely fantastic name. Right, so let's move that over here. Right, so I remember when I was a little girl, I was taken to see a number of wild beasts, and that was a great treat too. But the poor animals, instead of being any better or any happier from having been taken out of their dens and forests, were very unhappy and wanted much to be at liberty again. So seeing them thus shut up only gratifies my curiosity. It ought to have made me feel very sorry for them, but I was too young then to think of anything but the pleasure of seeing them, and I forgot how sad it must be to shut up, to be shut up in such small dirty places, after having been accustomed to roam about at pleasure among the beautiful flowery plains or by lakes and mountains. But when you go to ragged school, you feel quite the opposite of all of this, for the poor miserable boys and girls who are brought there are far happier than they were when running wild about the streets, and it is the very best thing that could have happened to them. Ask your friends to take you to ragged school. So, general opinions first of all. What do we think of it? Is there anything that you think is particularly interesting? Anything which you think, oh, I might like to comment in terms of context here? Is there anything that you'd like to point out in terms of language features that we could talk about? Anything at all? Okay, emotive. Yeah, I think there definitely are some emotive undertones. So it's a very reflective piece. So I remember when I was a little girl, so she's sort of responding in the way that you might expect a child. So it reminds me a little bit of the tone that To Kill a Mockingbird is written in, because it's written, the narrator is writing reflectively as what went on when she was a child, when she's writing as an adult. So I think that's quite an interesting thing to talk about. It's quite emotive, so talking about how the animals are kept, the types of vocabulary being used. So we've got unhappy, wanting to be at liberty again, so being free. Poor animals, shut up, and then we've got shut up in such small dirty places. So we've got some repetition there. Metaphorical. Okay, can you tell me why you think that this is metaphorical? Anecdotal. Yeah, absolutely. Uses wild beasts to contrast how the animals actually are, because they are locked up, and she calls them poor animals. Yeah, that's really nice. That's fab, Emma. So that is something that I've picked up on, and something I'm going to write about. But I'm going to sort of label it slightly differently to how you have done, although what you've said is completely right. So I'm going to talk about expectation versus reality. So what we envisage, what we think we're going to go and see, and then what we actually see, and what those differences are, which is what you've picked out, which is fantastic. Yeah, language features. Yeah, there's repetition of happier. So are we describing language features? So we're looking at language features. We're looking at the effects, we're analysing them rather than describing them. So taking it a little bit further, it's a little bit more sophisticated. Yep, absolutely. This is full of opinion as well. Colloquial language, that's an interesting one. I suppose it is probably quite colloquial, and it's accessible for 19th century. 19th century can be very dense and require a little bit of thinking and head scratching to understand. So I suppose it's relatively simple in terms of the language it uses, but colloquial means usually quite chatty, using slang, and she doesn't actually do that, but it is relatively basic in terms of how it's constructed. 19th century literature can be a puzzle to read and be very dense. Right, okay, so we've got absolutely loads of opinions in here. Now, is there anything which you find a little bit shocking? There's something which I find, I wouldn't say uncomfortable. I think if this was written now, it wouldn't be relatively well received. Could anyone tell me why that might be, what the differences are now? So let's just quickly. Shut up is quite colloquial. Yeah, you could make an argument for it being colloquial. I think I would probably just say that this is quite accessible for a wide variety of people because it's relatively straightforward to read. But yeah, I think you could make an argument for it. Right, okay. So triplets. So we've got here beautiful flowery plains, or by lakes and mountains. So we've got that one there. The other really nice thing is that she says you feel quite the opposite of all this. So she talks about her opinions there, and then we've got the repetition of poor, and then right at the end we've got some direct address. So ask your friends to take you to ragged school. And I think generalizations as well, she's attributing what she felt when she was there to everybody else, in that she's generalizing her feelings. Although I think that is the American spelling. Generalizing her feelings. So she's saying, this is what I feel, so this must be what everybody else feels, which quite possibly is not the case and probably wouldn't be. The other thing that she does is that she there is a allusion in that she alludes to the problem of captivity. But she doesn't really say it very directly. She doesn't talk about the problems. She just sort of talks about them being a little bit sad. I think she could take it so much further and she doesn't. So, oh, okay. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think you could definitely, yeah, saying it's colloquial is fine, I think. Right. Sibilance. So, flashback. Right, let's go with flashback first of all. Flashback is usually something we see in fictional writing, although I can completely understand why you've said it, because she's talking about a past event. If it was a flashback, we wouldn't have the comments of, I remember when I was a little girl. We wouldn't have things where she's talking about things in an adult way. She would be talking about it, you know, she's giving us some additional information that she's sort of taken on as an adult. So I'd say it's more anecdotal than a flashback. Sibilance, right, where is this sibilance? So seeing them thus shut up, maybe? Shut up in such small dirty places. Yeah, absolutely, sibilance. Well done. I'd missed that one. I was looking for some slightly more complex ones when I was looking at this. Yeah, fantastic. Right, okay. Can you talk about sentence lengths? You can for paper 1 question 2. So I'm 90% sure. I will double check for you guys tomorrow that you can talk about sentence structures as well. They just don't give you the bullet points. So I think you can if you want to. And generally with the 19th century ones, you'll get really long sentences. Right, paper 2, question 3. I will double check that for you and get back to you with that tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure that you can. Right, chat. What is the name of this piece? Susan will be streaming, not very dirty. rationalizes it because it says it's okay because the children are happy. Yeah, absolutely. So she's sort of putting ahead her joy and happiness over animals. Now, remember, this is 19th century. Do any of you guys know sort of the treatment of animals in the 19th century? Anything that you can potentially comment on in terms of context? Right, name of the piece. So it's called Foodless, Friendless in Our Streets. That's what it's called. There weren't many laws. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Was that Jess? Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Barnum, thank you. Yeah, B.T. Barnum. So I'm so impressed that you knew that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about him in terms of context. So we didn't have animal rights laws. We weren't, I want to say we weren't very compassionate, but that is a huge generalization. Things aren't like they are now, essentially. Things have changed for the better, I think. So P.T. Barnum, if you guys don't know, The Greatest Showman is based on P.T. Barnum, who was an American sort of circus leader. So I've pulled up a couple of bits and pieces in terms of the sorts of things that were quite common to see in the 19th century. So this is Barnum here, and Barnum exhibited what he was calling curiosities. So the vast majority here are what he was calling human curiosities. So people with rare conditions were being exhibited, like you might do with, I don't know, I suppose maybe like an art gallery now. They got very little money for doing it, really, and he made a huge amount of money from them. So this chap here, I think, is Tom Thumb. And then you've got, I think, this lady here might be the inspiration for the lady with the beard in The Greatest Showman, but I haven't seen it. But you know, these are the sorts of things that were being exhibited. So you've got Siamese twins here that were being taken on tour and shown to people. People with additional legs. You know, people who really need a lot of care and support to remain healthy as much as they can, and they didn't really get that. So that's what P.T. Barnum did. He also had a variety of exotic animals, and the treatment of them was not very good at all. So as you can see here, this looks absolutely terrifying. So having really exotic, dangerous animals and trying to train them, it's not something we have anymore, generally. Animals were usually really badly mistreated. So these, you can see there, the sort of cages that they're kept in, you know, are just sort of big enough for them to fit in. These sorts of tricks going on, you know, and this chap here, so this was a huge elephant called Jumbo, who was one of the favourites in Barnum's circus. He was absolutely massive, and when he died, his skeleton was removed, the bones were removed from his body and put together as an exhibit, and he was sort of taxidermied and sort of stuffed in some way to be preserved so he could still tour with them. So yeah, it was quite common to have mistreatment. I know definitely that there is an elephant at Longleat Safari Park called Anne, who used to be in a circus and has a lot of issues just because she was mistreated. I met one at Colchester Zoo who sways because he's been so used to just being in chains all the time and chained up and not being able to move, and the swaying is a way of comforting himself, like you might rock a baby when you're trying to get them to sleep. So yeah, huge amount of problems, and generally you don't see many circus acts these days with exotic animals. I'm not sure whether we can legally do it in this country anymore, I'm not sure. So that's the sort of thing that's what was happening at the time. So to see them in a zoo and being kept sort of in harsh conditions was okay. So by her saying we had a fantastic time, you know, the animals weren't very happy, but we had a fantastic time, that was just socially acceptable. So contextually, this would have been the norm, is what I'm trying to say to you guys. Can I talk about the laws in question? I would absolutely talk about them if I knew, but I don't. But things like animal rights, now you wouldn't be able to do that sort of stuff. You wouldn't be able to keep animals in very small cages legally anymore, at least not in this country. So there we go. Yeah, absolutely. So the lady with the beard is she's, I can't, is it her name, Car? I know she's been on Broadway. I've seen her playing Madame Thénardier. Well, I haven't seen her. I know I've watched a YouTube video of her playing Madame Thénardier in Les Mis. Yeah, she's done absolutely beautiful work, hasn't she, with that? And there's been a load of really good stuff coming out The Greatest Showman. But the treatment of them at that time wasn't particularly good and wouldn't have been able to do that sort of thing at the time. Yeah, so Hugh Jackman played Barnum. Right, let's move away from Barnum now. So you don't get very many lines to go at. So this is relatively quite generous in the amount that you will be given. But we've got absolutely loads to go on there. So I've made a little table, but I'm thinking we probably won't fill it in. So I think we've talked about most of these here. I think the only one that we haven't talked about is imagery. I think we've talked about everything else. So imagery then, you've got the idea of sort of what the habitat used to be, and here again, so returning to that and what they're actually being kept in. So that's really interesting. Is it true there's a road named after Barnum? It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. I'm not a Barnum expert. Perhaps you can go and do a little bit of research. There's some fantastic YouTube videos actually on Barnum, and on sort of there's a couple on Jumbo the elephant, which is really interesting, the story behind him. So yeah, I definitely recommend looking at those documentaries. They're not very long if you are interested. Right, okay. Another really interesting person to look at is the Elephant Man. And there's been a film made on the Elephant Man as well. Jumbo was a massive elephant that Barnum owned and exhibited. Right, let's move on from Barnum, although it is really interesting. Right, let's have a go at writing this up then. Right, so I'm going to crack straight on with using the author's name just to show off. So I've got my point there, then I'm getting my analysis in. So the examiners like you to use as short a quotation as you possibly as you can. So in order to make it relatively small and not to write a massive sentence, I've just used ellipsis from where I've chopped little bits out. So Beaver uses a direct comparison between expectation versus reality. Instead of being any happier, we could put here in square brackets, they were very unhappy. So that just means you've inserted that to make it clear to the reader and to make it read grammatically, because any happier were very unhappy doesn't make sense. So if you pop they in there in square brackets, that says to the examiner, I've added that in so it makes sense for you. Right. By choosing to use clear antonyms, can someone tell me what an antonym is, please? Rather than selecting, and if you want to show off, tell me what the opposite of it is, rather than selecting another vocabulary choice. The writer creates a clear juxtaposition. Oh, fabulous. A couple of you got back to me on that one super quick. Opposite of synonyms, yeah. Opposite words, yeah. So, for example, happy and sad would be antonyms. Synonyms are words which are very similar in meaning. So, happy and joyful, maybe. So, antonyms are opposites. Synonyms are words that are very close together in meaning, and antonyms and synonyms are the opposite of each other, if that hasn't completely puzzled your brain. Right, so creates a juxtaposition. Right, the effect of this may lead the reader to be persuaded. So I haven't really looked at format, audience and purpose today, because it's not particularly clear who the audience is. We know the formats of pamphlets, and this just seems to sort of be a descriptive piece. There doesn't seem to be sort of a political agenda, an allegory, in the fact that she's sort of fighting for animal rights or anything like that. If anything, it seems to be slightly the opposite. So, yeah, interesting. I think she might inadvertently persuade people that keeping them in these conditions is not good. So the effect of this may lead the reader to be persuaded that keeping animals in such conditions is both problematic and unsuitable. So that's just my general point there. Now I'm going to take it a little bit further. However, she also adds that the excursion, so an excursion means sort of an activity sort of outside of school. So if you were going to go on to a trip to a museum, for example, or you were going, I don't know, some sort of adventure park, something like that, that would be an excursion. She also adds that the excursion was incredibly enjoyable for the group of children. This could therefore imply that these there are positives after all, although it does pose a moral question. So moral question being, is it right for us to continue doing what we're doing for animals for our own enjoyment? Right, I haven't put my evidence here, so I'm just going to quickly pop my evidence in. So it was the very best thing. That needs to go there. Fabulous. Right, next paragraph. So the author also uses direct address. So as you might have noticed, I've used Beaver, her actual name, writer and author, just to give some variety. To generalize the feelings she has experienced, so just a basic point there, as well as to impose that others will feel the same way. Then I'm going to pop my evidence in. When you go to Ragged School, you feel quite the opposite. This use of direct address is much more subtle than what we might experience in modern literature. This opinion seems to imply that she supports, so I'm reading in between the lines, I'm looking at implicit information. The more you do that, the higher up in the marks you tend to go. If you just talk about things that you're explicitly told, you're not showing an in-depth understanding of the text. Right, so this opinion seems to imply that she supports the current treatment of animals as she holds the feelings of humans, right, as she appears to hold, I think we'll go for. Just so I'm not saying that in certitude, I'm being tentative. The feelings of humans more important. So now I'm going to get in that little bit of context that I've taught to you guys about. So this could be attributed. So notice that I'm using some advanced vocab in here as well, just to show off. So attributed to the public opinion of the time when exotic animals were exhibited in circuses and travelling shows. So just showing off, getting a bit of context in there. So as I've said to you guys before, I'm sort of just finding out a little bit of background information about what Victorian England was like is really helpful for this paper. You don't need to go off and revise it loads and loads, but maybe just find a documentary or two and just sort of have it on in the background whilst you're doing something else, or maybe podcasts. I don't know whether there are any good podcasts out there. There's a history one done by the BBC, but I can't remember what on earth it is called, but I'm sure there will be some Victorian stuff in there. So that might be interesting. I will look that one up as well for you for tomorrow. Because I have listened to it and it's quite interesting. So there might be something appropriate there. I'll have a look for you. Right, so last paragraph then. Beaver also takes time to comment on the lack of natural habitat. Beautiful, flowery plains, or by lakes and mountains. So notice that I don't always say Beaver uses a triplet. Beaver uses direct address. So I'm just mixing it up a little bit so it's not exactly the same every paragraph. So I'm then going to say this rule of three paints imagery in the reader's mind. Then I'm going to give a personal response, which you can absolutely do, making us feel pity for the animals. However, the writer chooses not to elaborate on the actual environment. I don't think we actually get much about the environment itself apart from small dirty place, I think. Which I think might be because she wants to capture the joy that she experienced there and sort of promote it in a way. I don't think it's her personally, I don't think it's her purpose to turn us against zoos. Perhaps to improve them maybe, but she talks much more about the environment that they were originally in as opposed to the environment that she's seen them in. Right, elaborate on the actual environment these animals live in. Apart from small dirty places. I think a few of you guys are disagreeing with me, so I'm going to check that out in a minute, which is fine. I love a good challenge. So this may be done to try and reduce the negatives as she appears to be biased towards ragged school and the enjoyment it evokes. Right, let's see what you guys have said. Yeah, fabulous, thank you. Paint, I put paints instead of paints, thank you. What is juxtaposition? Oh, I was expecting you loads of things to say. Loads of you to say, oh, I don't agree with that. Right. Oh, is it generalise? I think, whoops. I want to see a big picture of my face. I think, I could be wrong though. British spelling of the word instead of, right, so in American and Canadian English, many words use Z instead of S, which differentiates from British spelling. Generalised, so it is spelt with an S in this country. So another American spelling popping up for us, but well done for noticing, thank you very much. Right, what is juxtaposition? Fantastic question. So a juxtaposition is having two ideas which are the opposite of each other. So for example, here she says, but the poor animals, instead of being any better or any happier, so the idea that you would expect taken out of captivity, they would be looked after really well respected. It's actually the opposite. They says they were very unhappy. So it's just the two opposites. You can have oxymoron, which is two opposite words which are right next door to each other. So because there's a little bit of space, I've gone for juxtaposition rather than oxymoron, although they are antonyms, they are opposites. Right. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the session then. So any questions either about MyTutor generally or about English, anything that's cropped up today which you think I have absolutely no idea what you said, Vicky, can you tell me again? Please let me know. Whilst we were doing that, I've just knocked up a quick Kahoot for you guys. So this is just a true or false because you guys so with the raising the hand thing, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how it works and I don't think I'm allowed to let you actually speak. So if you've got a question, pop it in the Q&A or the chat for me, please. Right, okay, so I've just had a go at making this very quickly this morning because you guys said you liked the true or false. So there you go for the Kahoot. That's the game pin and where you need to go. So pop onto that for me. Whilst we're waiting for people to pop on, right, okay, so I will go back to the model answer once we've looked at this. Will there be more online class subjects? So I will wait for Bola to pop back for her to answer that one for you. And then in terms of tuition, so they range from £20 I think to £40 an hour. I charge 32, but different people charge different things. Right, let's get cracking with that because I'm aware of the time. It's a pretty short one. I think you guys will power through this really quickly. So satire is often used to speak about politics. Yep, so usually it's taking the mickey out of what a politician has done or a current affair that's going on. So at the moment you're seeing a lot of satire about Dominic Cummings, a lot of satire about Boris Johnson. So it's basically being a little bit sarcastic, taking the mickey a little bit about them. So an example is I saw on Facebook, which isn't sort of, I suppose, a particularly good example, but an event being created, which was, you know, one of these sort of mickey taking events, which was let's all drive up to Barnum Castle and back again to test our eyesight or something like that, and people joining that and saying that they're going to go and do that, which they're actually not going to, but it's just taking the mickey about what's been going on in the political world. Fabulous. Emma's on top at the moment. A generalization is when you make an assumption about a particular group of people. Yeah. Animal Farm is satire. Yeah, there is certain parts in there which are satire. It's definitely more of an allegory, which is putting out a political message. Yeah, so it can be making an assumption about a particular group of people. It can be other things, but it can be defined as that. Fabulous. So Louise has gone to the top. Bias is when you look at something objectively. Oh, right. Okay, so bias is where you're biased towards something, where you are being subjective, you're being swayed by something. So if you're looking at something objectively, you're not there, you are looking at things factually, you're looking at things that are provable, you're not considering your own opinions, you're not considering other people's opinions, you're just looking at the provable things, facts, statistics, findings that are in front of you. So that's what makes it objective. Subjective is opinions, basically, which can change from person to person. Slinky's gone to the top. Allusion is when you talk about something directly. I really like this music. I don't know why, I don't think I should like it. Fabulous. Yeah, that was I did that one to trick you out. So allusion is where you talk about something indirectly. You don't actually mention it. It's implicit rather than explicit. Slinky is still at the top. Well done. Jargon is a specific set of vocabulary used when discussing a particular topic. Yeah, so it's just subject terminology essentially. So if I was going to talk to you about English A level, I would be talking about blends and collocations and connotations and amelioration, pejoration, you know, things that you wouldn't know unless you were studying it in some sense, or you were part of a community that uses that. So for example, you could talk about, I don't know, sort of the subject terminology that you would use within the gaming society, which I would absolutely have no idea about because I don't game. Polysyllabic refers to how many words are in a sentence. Fantastic. Yet, so polysyllabic refers to a word with many syllables. Poly means many, and syllabic means syllables. Fabulous. Oh, Louise has overtaken Slinky. All to play for. Generalizations can usually go hand in hand with stereotypes. Yeah, so a stereotype is a generalization, isn't it? So, for example, all girls like pink. They don't, but that is what we assume, that all girls like pink because we assign pink to the gender of girls and we assign blue to the gender of boys. So that would be a generalization and a stereotype. Louise has managed to retain her position on top. Right, last one. To be credible, you should have a lot of experience in one area. Yeah, so I suppose perhaps some of you thought many areas. So you need to have a lot of experience to be credible, essentially. You need to know what you're talking about. So, for example, I think I gave Chris Whitty as being an example of someone who's very credible because he's got so much medical experience and he's done so much stuff in his professional career that he really knows what he's talking about and he's the best person to go to for advice. Right, let's see who's come out in third, second and first. So third, we've got Prantav. Second, Prussian gang. And Louise on first. Well done, Louise. Fantastic. You guys all got 8 out of 8. And then Slinky came fourth. Fabulous. I'm super impressed, guys. Right, so I will pop back to the model answer for you. Just close that down because I think the music might drive me slightly mad. Right, so I'll pop back to the model answer for you guys to have a quick read over. Right. So I think, Bola, I've got the one question for you, which is, will there be more online class subjects?
Hey Vicky, sorry, could you just repeat that?
Yeah, sure. So someone's asking if there will be more online class subjects.
That's still something we're looking into. We will update everyone via email once we come up with a decisive answer on that. Thanks for your patience, guys.
Fabulous. Right, okay, so will we do Kahoot every lesson? I don't want to overkill the Kahoots, to be honest with you. What I'm trying to do is use a nice variety of slightly different ones. So today we've done quizzes, we've done a Mentimeter, and we've done a Kahoot. So I know you guys love Kahoots and I know you guys love the interactive stuff. So I do try to build them into the lessons, but I'm trying to do a variety of slightly different ones so we don't get bored and it feels really repetitive, and I suppose Groundhog Day, essentially. But if you guys want a Kahoot every lesson, I will do you a Kahoot every lesson if that's a general sort of opinion. But I think having a nice variety is a good thing. Right, okay, so that is it for today. I don't think we have anything else. So some like the quizzes, yeah. So I'll definitely do some sort of interactive thing for you every session. I think I might have a look at Quizlet for next week because I don't think we've done one of those yet. Right, so thank you very much for coming along today, guys. So I will be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock as usual, and we will be doing Charge of the Light Brigade, which is Power and Conflict, AQA Poetry Bundle. But if you're not doing that, still do come along anyway, because I think there's a lot of really valuable stuff you could take away in just understanding how to pull poetry apart and analyse it in a really effective way. So don't feel like you shouldn't come just because that's not what you're studying. Right, so in terms of signing off then, so if you guys are interested in looking at something which is more personalised, more one-to-one, I know some of you asked how much I charge for a private lesson, you can have a look on our website and find a suitable tutor if that's something that you are interested in doing. I really do recommend it. It's quite different to how I run these sessions. So thank you very much for coming, and I will see you all tomorrow morning, fingers crossed. So have a fantastic afternoon, evening. See you tomorrow. Bye.